Friday morning. So, yes, a few showers again across the northwest on Friday, but much of the east and certainly across the south, not much in the way of rainfall. It's a dry, fine day on Friday with lengthy spells of sunshine, that fresher feel, that less humid feel, with temperatures close to average high teens or low 20s. But again, feeling pretty fresh across northern Scotland with temperatures here in the mid-teens. Into the weekend, again, if you have to rain, it's not good news. Most places dry with sunny spells, starting off quite fresh, but signs of things warming up through the weekend into next week.
As the race for number 10 intensifies, we are giving you the chance to get to know our next Prime Minister. We've invited the two candidates to meet you, the GB News viewers, and let you put your questions to them. Head directly to gbnews.uk or send me your questions to questions@gbnews.uk.
Join Alistair Stewart for the People's Forum with Liz Truss. Wednesday at 5, only on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Nancy Pelosi's trip to Taiwan has provoked anger from the Chinese. How worried should we be about an increasingly militarised China? We'll look at Keir Starmer's problems in the Labour Party with frontbenchers going on picket lines. We'll talk about the Bring Back Boris campaign. Yes, they're still trying. They really, really are. And I'll be joined on Talking Pines by Merrill Osmond, which should just be great. First, though, let's get the news from Tamsin Roberts.
Nigel, thank you. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. The European Court of Human Rights has refused an appeal by the parents of Archie Battersby to postpone the withdrawal of his life support treatment. The 12-year-old has been in a coma since April after an accident at home, and doctors say he is brain-stem dead. His parents appealed to the European Court after 3 judges in the UK refused to stop the withdrawal of his care and also refused permission to appeal against their ruling. Sajid Javid has become the latest heavyweight to throw his support behind Liz Truss to be the next Conservative Party leader. Writing in The Times, he criticised her rival Rishi Sunak and his policies, insisting tax cuts are now essential. Meanwhile, a YouGov poll shows 60% of party members support the Foreign Secretary and just 26% back Mr Sunak. Ahead of tonight's hustings in Cardiff, she said she's feeling confident.
I'm not taking anything for granted. There is still a long way to go in this leadership election. And what I'm about is unleashing opportunity across the United Kingdom, getting our economy growing and delivering for people all over the country.
The Bank of England is expected to announce another interest rate hike tomorrow. The central bank's under pressure to control spiralling inflation, with a think tank warning it could hit 15% next year. The Resolution Foundation says oil prices have fallen substantially, but gas price increases are wiping out any good news. If the bank raises the base rate by 0.5 percentage point, it'll be the biggest increase since 1995. G7 foreign ministers are calling on China to de-escalate its aggressive military activity around the Taiwan Strait, following the highest-level US visit to the island in 25 years. In a 24-hour trip, US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi met with the Taiwan's president, signalling Washington's support to the nation. In response, the Chinese Air Force sent around 30 jets across the median line bordering the two countries. Beijing's plans further military exercises around the island's sea and air borders. The first shipment carrying food out of Ukraine since the start of Russia's invasion is on its way to Lebanon after inspections in Turkey. The ship, which is carrying around 26,000 tonnes of corn, departed Odessa's port on Monday. In an exclusive interview with GB News, the chair of the Defence Select Committee, Tobias Elwood, says the delay in exports from Ukraine is forcing UK food prices higher.
The cost of living crisis that we're experiencing here is directly consequential to the fact that grain cannot get out of Odessa. That is ground zero when it comes to the breadbasket of Europe, Ukraine being able to feed not just its own country, but Africa and indeed Europe as well. Get that grain moving, and then grain prices, food prices then drop. That affects the cost of living. You sort out Ukraine, oil and gas prices will lower as well.
TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Nigel.
Good evening. I mentioned last night Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House in the USA. Number 3, you know, you've got a president, a vice president. If they were both to disappear in a plane crash, Nancy Pelosi would be the president of the USA, despite the fact she's in her 80s. I mentioned her visit to Taiwan and the initial reaction that we got from the Chinese government. We've seen tanks massing on southern Chinese beaches, live firing exercises in the sea, and rage and anger coming from the Chinese government. So I wonder, is Nancy Pelosi's trip a principled thing to do? And look, I'm not a Nancy Pelosi fan, that won't surprise any of you, but on this issue, actually, she's been very consistent ever since Tiananmen Square, one of the few American politicians that recognized that China might pose a threat. But hey, here she is on her own, on a visit that we're told is not actually sanctioned by the White House, provoking all of this fury. So perhaps it's actually reckless. But the real question I want you to answer for me is, should we be worried about the militaristic rise of China? Let me know your thoughts. Farage@gbnews.uk. I think we should be. I think the world is waking up, the Western world is waking up very, very late to the threat that China poses, and it worries me very greatly. Well, a man who studies these things is Mark Armand, director of the Crisis Research Institute in Oxford, and thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Pelosi, she has actually been very consistent on China, hasn't she?
Yeah, I think the great problem is you can be right, and she has been right, that this is a brutal dictatorship that has contempt for its own people. The question is being morally right wise? In this case, she's gone to Taiwan to show her support for Taiwan's democracy and for its right to run itself. But the Chinese see that as a sign the Americans are going to recognize it as an independent country, and that for the Chinese is a tripwire. We have to ask, what is important? We want to keep Taiwan free, running their own lives. Do we want to provoke a conflict? Secondly, we also want to protect those sea lanes and all the trade routes. And those two could be drawn into a conflict with China.
So you see this as an unnecessary act of provocation, better than let sleeping dogs lie?
Yeah, let sleeping dogs lie. I say I don't like to say that I want to over-criticise her, because she has been standing up. There are all sorts of huge business interest lobbying groups in Washington, Bill Clinton and the Bushes and so on, all said China is going to become just like us if only we let it into the World Trade Organization.
Which we did in 2001.
Yeah.
Yes.
If only we let its economy spread, if we let it develop its subsidiaries everywhere and we buy into its technology, then somehow or other magically they will be transmuted into being just like us. Whereas what we've seen repeatedly is Chinese communists, from the moment they came to power to the present day, whenever they had to choose between profit and power, they've chosen to keep hold of power, even if it costs them a lot in the short term, because then ultimately they can profit from the control that they get.
Well, we can't just blame the Americans for getting this wrong, because after all, you know, the 2010 government of George Osborne and David Cameron thought this was our great future.
No, this was a great consensus across the West. And all wise people said, surely they'll see it's in their interest to become like us. But in fact, they said, these people are suckers to a degree. They have allowed the Western world, the Americans and the Europeans and us, to be tied into all sorts of supply chains that we saw with the COVID crisis.
Yeah.
Suddenly, if things go wrong in relations with China, these things can be snarled up, or even they can, as it were, sanction us by changes to the supply practice.
Now, we've got, as I mentioned, tanks on beaches, amphibious craft, we've got aeroplanes, we've got naval exercises, live firing, things that haven't happened as close as that to Taiwan for years and years and years. You wrote in the Mail today, Daily Mail today, that the 1914 spark of the assassination in Sarajevo sparked a First World War that nobody could see coming. How dangerous is this?
Well, this is very dangerous, partly because the Chinese have announced they're going to have naval live fire exercises inside the 12-mile limit of Taiwan. So are the Taiwanese going to, in a sense, retreat, take their border, such as it is, further and closer to their own island, or will they try to stop that or do something to say that this is not permitted? So the trigger event could happen in the next few days. This is where the Chinese have never got this close to the island of Taiwan.
How scared should people be of China? Because my impression, Mark, is that most people still think China is this insular, albeit huge, but insular country, and they sell us a lot of products, and people don't realise how much they've militarised and their colonialist expansion in Africa and places like that.
Well, certainly their military power, their naval power has grown enormously. And also, as you say, their economic influence, their technological influence, their reach into all sorts of places is there. And we can see, say, with the war between Russia and Ukraine too, many African states, many other Asian states say, we don't want to offend the Chinese. You in the West may be upset about this, but it's a long way from us. And these people are building roads, railways, pipelines, building factories. We depend upon them. And so, in a sense, the Chinese have mastered the art of buying friends. Whether they will stay bought, we don't know. But at the moment, when push has come to shove, a lot of people have said, whatever happens, I don't want to offend the Chinese. And that's going to cause us problems, because we've always assumed that ultimately the weight of the West was so great that in any real big crisis, most people will gravitate to us. Well, maybe now the weight of the world is shifting.
Well, this is a subject we're going to return to again and again and again. But a final thought, President Xi, he's been there for 2 terms. This should be it, but he wants to go on and be president for life.
I think that's the case. He's going to be the great helmsman. And this is, again, where the Mao model of somebody who's ultimately more concerned about power than prosperity is really going to be the challenge that we face in the future.
Mark Harmon, thank you very much indeed for joining us on GB News. And there's a lot there, folks, to think about. There really, really is. And let's hope that Mark's worst fears are not confirmed over the course of the next few days. I really do hope that. Now, last night, we showed you exclusive footage from TikTok of Albanian criminal gangs who were advertising to cross the English Channel. They even had a summer sale. Yes, you can come to England by dinghy for £3.5 grand. Well, on there was a phone number. So earlier on today, we decided to call the trafficker.
Hello. Can you get me to the UK?
Yeah.
How much will it cost?
You don't understand, bro. Me no speak English little bit.
Okay, I want to get from France to the UK by boat. Can you do that? Can you do that?
Hey, bro, me no speak English. Please, you send message. Google Translate.
£5,000. Is that?
Yeah.
Is that what it will cost?
Yeah.
Well, there we are. Now, I'm not saying that GB News' staff are very good at Albanian, but it's interesting, isn't it? That number was still live. TikTok did respond yesterday and have told us they've closed 4 accounts. We went back to the Home Office to say, look, you know, we reported this to you yesterday, and yet that UK mobile phone number is still active, still being answered by a trafficker. They came back to us to basically suggest that we ought to contact the police and other law enforcement agencies. They're not fit for purpose. Home Office decide just to shovel this on to somebody else. We thought informing the Home Office of this, giving them the facts, was enough, but clearly not. Well, joining me to discuss what on earth is going on with these Albanian gangs is Mohammed Velia. He is a political correspondent for the Albania-based broadcaster Top Channel, and he joins me from Vlora in Albania, where he's actually on holiday, I think. So, Mohammed, good evening. Thank you for joining me.
Good evening, Nigel.
So what we've seen is one very big criminal trafficking gang operating in the north of France, 39 people arrested, a bit of a vacuum. It now would appear that it's the Albanian gangs that have taken over many of these routes. And indeed, whilst people are coming from all over the world via this route, there are a lot of Albanians coming to the United Kingdom. Why? I have to ask you, why do so many Albanian people want to enter the UK illegally?
Nigel, the quick response is going to be one word: poverty. Most of the people who are getting from Albania to the UK on the boat are from northern Albania, a place without the possibility of employment, undeveloped. And another reason why people from northern Albania are choosing to put their life in danger getting on boat to that trip to the UK, it is because in 1998, thousands of Albanians from northern Albania came as migrants in the United Kingdom. And now other people, other members of the families are getting in this way in the United Kingdom. You just said Albanians are taking over the human smuggling from France to the United Kingdom. That is not the case. Albanians are only the middleman. The trafficking, it is controlled by Kurdish people who organize, who buy the boats, and who have all the mechanism of this human trafficking. Albanian, which you've seen on the TikTok, I mean, I've seen your show yesterday, and the video you just played today, it is a middleman, which are connected with the Kurdish people who are the leaders of this human trafficking. I'm not surprised at all to see such videos on your program, because in the past 12 months I've seen hundreds of videos on the TikTok, and I can say the TikTok has become a free criminal advertising tools for people smugglers. Before I was getting live on your show, I did a quick search on TikTok, and there are about 50 active accounts advertising people smuggling from Dunkirk to the United Kingdom. UK media in the past has reported this problem, and they went to the TikTok saying, what the hell is going on? Why you don't remove such advertisements? And when the UK media sent the links to the TikTok removed. But the next hour, more advertisements are on. And the TikTok saying the advertisements are in Albanian. It is difficult for us to detect the Albanian language, and we cannot monitor what's going on in our platform. And if that's the case, why TikTok is not employing Albanian speaking to check and remove such advertisement?
No, well, absolutely. Thank you for coming on, giving us your thoughts. You may well be right about the Kurds being the real big boys in all of this, but certainly there are a lot of people acting as traffickers or middlemen from Albania. But your comments on TikTok are well made, well observed, and absolutely correct. And thank you for joining me this evening here on GB News. In a moment, we will look at what is going on in the Conservative Party. The ballot they were going to send out to members, the opportunity to change the vote later electronically, apparently that is open to hacking of all kinds. So they're rethinking how to do the ballot. If they can't organise a ballot of 160,000 members, how on earth can they run the country? And we'll be joined by somebody who wants Boris to come back. We'll also look at the Labour Party. It seems picket lines for some unions are considered to be far worse than others.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
I asked earlier, how worried should we be about China? Some of your responses that have come in. Levi says, no, we shouldn't be worried about China. We should be terrified about Nancy Pelosi. Well, right, OK. Maybe her visit is reckless. But the point I'm trying to make is I think too few people in the Western world have woken up to what China has now become. Another viewer says, war between China and the US would be catastrophic, deadly and destructive. Unfortunately, it is no longer unthinkable. The relationship between the US and China, the two world superpowers, is peculiarly volatile. It rests on a seismic fault of cultural misunderstanding. Well, perhaps it rests really on a fault of Chinese expansionism in every way. Russell says, so China is having a hissy fit because they don't want a visit from a democratic, peace-loving and humanitarian nations. China has to wind their necks in. They are not in the modern political world, in my opinion. Well, Russell, they're certainly not in the modern political world. I'd agree with you on that, but I still think they pose quite a threat. Harry says, no, we should be worried about being able to keep warm and to afford to eat this winter, Harry. I'm sure a lot of people think that, and we may well be tempted to say that it's a faraway place of which we know little, but the situation just outside Taiwan at the moment is very dangerous. Deborah says, very, very worried about China. Now, I mentioned before the break, the Conservative Party can't even organise a ballot of their own members and get it right. I find that totally and utterly extraordinary. But overnight, there's been some polling which suggests that if Conservative members were polled, and if Boris Johnson's name was on the ballot, he would get 40% of the vote and win the contest against Truss and Sunak very, very easily. Now we know, do we not, that Lord Cruddas, David Campbell-Bannerman and others have been getting a petition ready to put Boris back on the ballot. I have to say, for my money, I think it's for the birds. But they're joined by Alex Story, who's a Conservative politician, activist, and now one of the leaders of bringing back Boris. Alex, he's gone. I mean, the ballot papers, I know they've been delayed, but those ballot papers are going out imminently. You can't get him on the ballot, can you?
Well, I mean, it's always good to hope. I mean, what's been interesting about the entire process is that if we go back over the last 2 decades, we know that when Tony Blair resigned, everybody cheered. When David Cameron resigned, people shrugged their shoulders. When Theresa May resigned, there was an intense sigh of relief from most of the population. But when Boris was forced to resign, 14,000 letters were sent by members of the public to CCHQ asking them, what are you doing?
Members of the public or Conservative Party
members of the public wrote, according to The Sun. But then I think what the interesting thing is the spark that was lit by Lord Peter Krudas, because by doing that, he enabled people to say, hang on, this thing was forced on us. We have a Prime Minister whose flaws were known. A lot of people in the Red Sea...
What, that he was a liar?
No, that he well, the way that people would have said...
Alex, the majority of the country think the Prime Minister is a liar.
Well, I think that they will also say that most politicians are liars, if we're honest.
Do you know what? I've never, in my experience, heard that word used as openly and as repeatedly as it is about Johnson.
Let's go back to some of the people who accuse him of lying. For instance, Alistair Campbell goes around calling...
He would not be the role model for this, I would agree.
But what I'm saying is that this guy is sitting in a glass house lobbing concrete blocks around. No, I think the reason why this is so important, I think, is because the membership of this organization has completely been bypassed by a small group of people whose interest
members of Parliament who've been selected by your associations. They're representatives of your party.
All of them. He won a vote of no confidence just a few weeks before, and also he did relatively well at the local elections. We all know that the actual story in May was not that Boris Johnson was unpopular,
but
it was that Keir Starmer...
Hang on, I think you're missing the point here.
Right.
Even if there are people like you, who are Conservative Party members and activists, who feel very strongly that this has been done badly and it's wrong, and I know you feel it and believe it, here's the point. Over 40% of Conservative members absolutely wanted him to go, and 40% of Conservative voters absolutely wanted him to go. He has lost nearly half his support within less than 3 years of being Prime Minister. Doesn't that tell you there's no way back for him?
Well, let's test it. I mean, the only thing that we're asking is for a vote. I mean, you've been extremely successful at asking for a vote because people and experts were telling you that Europe wasn't an issue.
I know.
Right?
I know. I get that. No, I get that.
I get that. It's very different when you have an actual say. Who are the people who are polling? You know that there is a massive difference between an actual election and an opinion poll. So the only thing that we're asking is simply, could we have a ballot of the membership? Do we think that the Prime Minister should have been treated in this way, and should he resign?
Well, I think it's for the birds. I don't think it's going to happen. If I'm right, and he doesn't get on this ballot, will you in future, at dinners in the Carlson Club or wherever it may be, do the old toast to the king across the water in the sort of... Is he going to be the Bonnie Prince Charlie? Will you be wanting him to come back at any opportunity?
But we'll be able to celebrate Lazarus rising from the dead. I mean, there is something romantic and quirky and quixotic
Alex,
about it.
I have to say, I think you're wrong, but I really admire the passion with which you believe this. And I worry, though, with people like you, whether the Conservative Party can ever heal this rift. Alex Story, thank you
very much
for coming in. Now, during the last few months, we've been through an endless Conservative Party psychodrama. I think that is pretty much the only way that this can be described. And you'd forget, wouldn't you, really, that there is a Labour Party, Her Majesty's loyal opposition, led by Keir Starmer. Now, I can't give Starmer very high marks out of 10 for charisma, for humour, even for forward-thinking policies. But the one thing I've credited Starmer with repeatedly on this show and elsewhere is he got rid of Corbyn, the far left have been relatively silenced, and that means that Labour just aren't too scary. But suddenly, he has a bit of a problem. I'm joined by Nigel Nelson, political editor of the Sunday Mirror. Nigel, as I say, he's done a great job, I think, getting the extreme left out, and I give him great credit for that. But suddenly we have Sam Tarry, who attends an RMT picket line and gets sacked. But this week, it's the Communication Workers Union and three front benches, including very prominent Lisa Nandy, attend those picket lines, and that seems to be okay, but Starmer's on holiday until the 15th of August. Are some strikes good and some strikes bad? Is discipline breaking down within the Labour Party? Or is Starmer showing he's not really used to leading things?
Not really any of those things.
Go on.
First of all, that Sam Tarry wasn't fired for going on a picket line. What he was fired for was for speaking out of turn, effectively. He made policy up on the hoof that was against collective responsibility, which shadow ministers and government ministers all have to abide by. That was the mistake. He was talking about inflationary pay rises, which is not Labour Party policy. So that was the reason.
But hang on, if you attend a picket line for a trade union demanding a huge pay increase, effectively you're endorsing that position anyway.
Well, but you don't go on television and say as a shadow minister that is policy, which is effectively what he was doing. So that's why he was fired. Now, Keir Starmer doesn't want his front benches on the picket line. That's perfectly clear. Lisa Nandy, on the other hand, she cleared it with Starmer's office and appeared on the picket line, and that seems to be fine. Hasn't said anything out of turn while being there. My own view is that a shadow minister who purports to be in government not very long probably shouldn't go on a picket line. I think that Keir Starmer is right. His argument is that Labour has to turn from a party of protest into a party of power, and you can't then start turning up at strikes that a couple of years down the road you may have to be dealing with. We would hope he would deal with it an awful lot better than the Tories have.
Will he deal with the three front benches then?
No, I mean, not for going on the picket line.
So that's okay, you think?
Yeah, I think that my point was that I think that it should be an individual choice. Were I a front bencher in the Labour Party, I would not go on the picket line.
OK, but some are. So, deeper question. Ken Livingstone sat here last week and said the Labour Party and the trade union movement, it's the same. It's one and the same. And at times during the last 120 years, it has been one and the same. It's not anymore, though, is it?
We're having a few problems at the moment. I mean, inevitably you're going to find a situation like this where strike action gets bitter. And so you've got Sharon Graham from Unite, and she's saying things like that when she's listening to Keir Starmer, if she closes her eyes, she doesn't know whether it's a Labour politician or a Tory one speaking. So there is a problem with unions. Yeah. I imagine that will come to a head in September at the party conference, when they'll probably give him a hard time. That is the point where he's really got to actually exercise his authority. He's the leader of the Labour Party. In the same way that Tony Blair did it with the unions, Starmer's got to do the same thing.
I get that, but here's the difference. Blair had a vision, and it may be one we agreed with or we disagreed with or we think worked. It's irrelevant. He had a vision.
He won 3 elections, so
he had a vision in the 90s, what he was going to do with the National Health Service. That was one of his big sells to the country, and everyone knew it. What's Starmer's big vision?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, at the moment, the Labour Party seems to have an official policy of fence sitting. I do object to that. The one thing that you had about Tony Blair was there was an underlying political philosophy, in the same way that Margaret Thatcher had an underlying political philosophy. Completely different, but they're there. I think that's what you need in a party leader and in a prime minister. And the ones who last longest are the ones who've got that, Blair and Thatcher being the obvious examples. Yeah. Now, you're absolutely right. I'm not quite sure what Keir Starmer's political philosophy is.
Maybe he isn't.
Well, maybe he isn't. Maybe it's pure pragmatism. It could well be that. It's not a bad thing in a prime minister just to be pragmatic. What I do think we're going to see is that the kind of policies that we're looking for at the moment and I agree with you, are sadly lacking, I think we'll see that nearer the election. I think he's storing up his fire for the manifesto general election, which could be next year, and that's where I can see it going.
We'll wait and see, but at the moment, I have to say, Nigel, it's not all that inspiring, really. Thank you for joining us, and we'll keep tabs on what's happening in the Labour Party. I feel in much of media, we're just ignoring the Labour Party. It's quite extraordinary. Now, every August, I say the same thing. It's August, it's the city season, we absolutely will be getting stories about sharks, and probably in Cornwall. It's normally suspected sighting of a great white, or it's some baby sharks like smoothhounds or spur dogs seen in a Sussex harbour, and suddenly it's on the front page of the newspapers. There are, of course, many shark species in this country. One of them is the blue shark. It's a migratory shark. It comes into the southwestern waters in the summer months, and actually in the last couple of years it's come in really very, very big numbers. I know this because I'm an angler. Some people disapprove of that, but we catch these blue sharks. They're incredibly amazing creatures, and we do, of course, return them alive, unlike some nations on Earth who would slaughter them in vast quantities to make shark's fin soup. But shark observing, shark diving has become a really big hobby down in the southwest. Lots of skippers taking parties out, and there's been a shark attack. A lady's been bitten on the leg. It's the first known shark attack in the UK since 1847, and I've heard today on the grapevine one or two boats taking shark diving trips have actually cancelled their bookings. They're worried about it. They're worried about the insurance. Well, joining me to talk sharks is James Glancy, a soldier, former politician, environmentalist, conservationist, and lover of sharks.
Absolutely. Like you, I know we've had conversations about sharks before. I mean, I think, first of all, it's a good news story that we're seeing blue sharks in our water, because as you mentioned there, blue sharks particularly have been hammered by commercial fishing, especially around Europe. Common fisheries policy has actually allowed the destruction of, well, all species, because the Mediterranean is virtually dead. So it's good that we're seeing them. I dispute calling this an attack when you're chumming the water and you're getting in close proximity to them. You've got an animal that is using its senses. It's there to feed because you've heightened its senses. And you're threatening it. And people are flapping around, and it's just a bite. You know about it if it's an attack. 2 weeks ago I was in Florida, not far from Trump's residence actually. And I was
there's a lot of sharks there.
Yeah, I was diving with bull sharks. And you know, those sort of animals, you know about it if you actually are attacked by them in brackish water and rivers.
I completely understand. You know, you're conservationist, and you've made some wonderful films, and you're very passionate. Why would any sane human being want to go and swim with bull sharks?
Actually, to demystify them. You know, we were surrounded by 20, and they're an absolutely amazing species. I wouldn't do it particularly at night time. I wouldn't do it around a river mouth, but in open water and daytime, it is a fantastic experience.
And blue sharks in Cornwall. You know, I mean, thousands of people every year are now going snorkeling and going out and seeing these blue sharks. What's your advice to people? Should they continue doing this? Should they perhaps not be putting food, chum, in the water?
I mean, these operations are bringing in a good amount of revenue in Cornwall and across the world, and they're creating ambassadors, or people understand sharks, understand the issues. So it's a good thing to have these interactions. Unfortunately, it's very hard to get sharks consistently next to your boat without chumming. So almost all diver operations, all films use this method. Once you do that, there is an increased chance of an issue. But again, this is minor, and there are thousands of these operations running, and it's incredibly rare. So I wouldn't call this necessarily an attack. This is a bite. It's unfortunate, and I hope the dive operators continue as soon as possible. The thing you don't want to be doing is wearing jewellery. You don't want to be flapping around on the surface, and you don't want to get between a piece of bait and a shark.
No, quite.
And, you know, I don't know the exact situation, but something's happened there.
And a final thought, James, perhaps a rather important final thought. There's been some terrible things happen on our big oceans. You know, terrible, terrible things that have happened. What can people do if they want to help?
From a conservation point of view, I think anything that supports the reduction of illegal fishing and commercial operations, that, you know, we see these huge fishing fleets coming from Europe and just decimating all our fish stocks. That is, even though that's regulated and it's legal, that is highly destructive to the ecosystem. So the more we can campaign, follow conservation organisations and put pressure on increased management of our fisheries, increased management of our oceans and our seas, we can stop overfishing and we can allow these ecosystems to rebuild.
James Glancy, love your passion. Thank you very much indeed. Now, I'm joined in a moment by Mark White, GB News' Home and Security Editor, and he has uncovered something, I think, of a scandal, and it's to do with war widows. These are people who've been widowed over the course of the last 20, 30 years, getting remarried and losing their pensions.
Yeah, it's one of these stories, Nigel, where you feel a real sense of anger when you come away on behalf of those you've interviewed because of how utterly unfair it seems. People probably don't realise that if you are a war widow, if your other half died in the line of duty, then you decide to have the audacity to live your life again and get remarried, then you get your war widow's pension stripped from you immediately. That was rectified to an extent in 2015 when the government decided they weren't going to do that anymore. You can remarry, you won't get your war widow's pension removed. However, there are some 300 war widows who are still not getting their pension because they married before 2015, and they feel utterly betrayed and abandoned. This is what they.
You've got some interviews to show me.
This is what they told me. This is my exclusive report.
He lived for flying. You marry somebody in the Air Force, you marry the military, and everything that comes with it.
Jude Howcroft's husband Bill was killed in a flying accident behind the controls of his RAF Tornado in 1998. In the months before his death, Jude recalls one particular conversation where her husband insisted if the worst ever happened, she had to try her best to move on with her life.
Bill actually sat me down and said, right, we need to have a conversation. Things do happen, you've seen it. And I want you to promise me that if you fall in love again, you don't hold back and you live your life for me and the kids.
7 years after Bill's death, Jude finally found love again and remarried. Official government policy meant she automatically lost her £7,000 annual war widow's compensation payment.
I have never stopped loving Bill. Ever. But the fact that I had to give up my pension, it was almost being judged that how dare I find love again. I clearly couldn't have loved my first husband. And it just makes me so angry.
In 2015, the government changed its policy, ensuring any war widow who remarried still received their war widow's pension. But hundreds who'd remarried before that date were not included. They are, they say, the forgotten widows.
What's wrong? It's immoral. It's discrimination. And the compensation, which is called the war widow's pension, is the only tangible link these individuals have to their late husband.
40 years after the death of her husband Ian aboard HMS Argonaut in the Falklands, and although Margaret Allen remarried, she is still profoundly affected by his loss. She met the then Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Liz Truss, in 2018, who promised to right a wrong, to ensure that war widows' pensions were restored. Margaret's now calling on the woman who may well be our next Prime Minister to make good on that promise.
I would ask her to stand by that statement and resolve this now. It's almost 7 years we have been campaigning to get this corrected. All we're asking for is parity with our peers. We've struggled, we've been traumatised and stressed for 7 years. Enough is enough.
We are the forgotten few. Our husbands paid the price, but that injustice remains. We're not asking for anything that isn't rightfully ours.
I must say, well done, Mark, with that. Where does this go next, this campaign? I mean, you've just started, really, haven't you?
Yeah.
Has Liz Truss answered you?
Well, she hasn't. And, of course, according to the war widows, they desperately want a commitment from her. She is the candidate, after all, who says that she always keeps her promises, she gets things done. Yeah. But as yet, the Liz Truss campaign have not responded to our inquiries. In the meantime, those war widows are saying, look, if there are any other war widows out there that think they may fall into this category, then they can contact through us, through our email address, and we'll pass that on. So that's farage@gbnews.uk. We'll pass that on to these war widows.
Great work. Well done, Mark. Perfect. In a moment, it's Talking Pints. I'll be joined by the former lead singer of the Osmonds, Merrill Osmond. He's still very popular. There were fans in the street outside waiting for him.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, he exposed the scandal that helped bring down the PM, but now Chris Pincher accuser and former Olympic rower Alex Story wants Boris to stay in number 10. He'll join me live. Plus, it's a blockbuster night of opinion courtesy of top US journalist Megyn Kelly, columnist extraordinaire Rod Little and best-selling writer Lionel Shriver. And as ever, I'll break down the headlines of the day with my superstar panel, Daily Mail columnist Amanda Patel, entrepreneur and activist Adam Brooks and broadcaster Ashley James. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Let's see our Talking Pints guest in action before I introduce him.
Where I closed it.
Well, it's Merrill Osmond joining me on Talking Pints. Merrill, welcome.
Nigel.
I have to say, now, as a Mormon, I've gone for non-alcoholic beer today, because I know that Mormons, you don't even have tea or coffee, do you?
Not really, no.
Gosh.
We're non-caffeine. Well, this is caffeine. It's just this is a Diet Coke. It's a Diet Coke. But
it's interesting, because, I mean, obviously Utah, huge Mormon population.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is the Mormon community in the United Kingdom is growing.
It's unbelievable.
So tell us, what's the appeal? What's the appeal of the church?
Well, I don't know. The people here are just amazing. That's all I can say. Half the Osmonds came from here. They migrated back over to the United States, but we just love you people. You've loved the Osmonds. I don't know. You just are. You've supported us for 64 years.
Hey, I remember,
you guys got us started.
I remember as a kid the TV program. I mean, it was unbelievable. And you were nearly always the lead singer, weren't you?
Yeah.
Although Donnie did a fair bit.
Donnie did his thing, yeah.
What was it like having a brother who was the real pin-up?
I tell you, I wouldn't want to be Donnie Osmond for anything. I mean, I love him. He's incredible. But the poor guy never had a life. I mean, never had a real normal life.
Yeah.
and I just admire him. I don't know. Donnie is Donnie. He came to this world a star, and he's going to end up becoming a superstar.
Well, you're not doing too bad, are you? Because, I mean, you know, they were waiting for you in the street outside the studio.
We've got the most loyal fans. I don't know how they found out I was here, but they are unbelievably wonderful people.
They must have been an amazing few years.
Oh my gosh! You know, Paul McCartney.
47 platinum and gold awards. I mean awards. I mean, just extraordinary.
I know. I don't think I could even tell you how unbelievable it has been being an Osmond. Like I was going to say, Paul McCartney said to us that we were not experiencing hysteria, we were experiencing mania, and there's a big difference.
Quite unbelievable.
Yeah.
Now, of course, huge success, big family, really big family, lots and lots of children.
Yeah.
And of course, the more children you have, the higher the risk that you get some that aren't very well. I know you've had tragedy in your own family.
Yeah, I lost my son. He had died of a heart attack a few years ago. Broke our hearts.
Hard, very, very hard.
Marie lost her son.
Yes.
But you know, we truly have this belief system, but we're going to see him again, and that gets us through it. You know. And having a large Osmond family, the dental bills continually build up.
And your other son, who suffers from deafness, and you've really been proactive about that.
Very, very proactive.
And I was interested that you're involved with the UK deafness charity.
Yeah, we've been raising a lot of money for the last 11 years for the awareness program more than anything else. And it's really, really paid off. We're doing our final one here this coming week. But it's been hey, had it not been for our two deaf brothers, we never would have even been in the business, because we wanted to raise money to buy hearing aids. But my son is deaf, and he's the pride of our life.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because the sight charities find raising huge amounts of money not easy, because we're living in tough times. But the deaf charities have always found it much harder.
Yes.
And we've got, in this country, 5 or 6 million tinnitus sufferers.
Really?
Alone in this country. I know that maybe it depends on the extremity of it.
Yeah.
But if you're raising money for them, you're doing a really, really good thing.
Well, it's just been, again, amazing. The people here are genuinely wanting to give. And you got your corporations. Bless their hearts. They've supported us for 11 years, and they continue to raise the money. So thank you.
Now, your involvement with the UK is interesting, because you're here on tour.
Yeah.
You're out there doing your stuff.
Yeah.
Mostly country music.
No.
No, bit of everything.
Rock and roll heaven.
Right, rock and roll. And I looked at the schedule, and you're going to be here for another 6 months, 8 months, something like that.
I'm going to close up my career in October. I got 14 concerts to do in October, and then I'm pretty well going to go fishing, Nigel.
Is this really it?
That's it.
Merrill Osmond.
A lot of people don't believe that's true, but it's time for me to be grandpa. And after October, I might do a couple things in December, but this is it. This is my final.
So, and you're finishing off in the UK,
right here where it all started.
It's fascinating. But how do you've been on stage, you've been a star, you've had these adoring, the mania that's followed all of you, Osmond.
I know.
How do you just stop? You can't, can you?
You know, it's what I've known since I was a baby. You know, and so being out there on the stage, singing the lead songs, and getting them to give the emotion back to us. I mean, I'll never forget that. It's etched in my head forever. But you know what's more important to me than anything, Nigel? It's my little kids, and it's my little grandkids. Now, they need to know that Grandpa did what he did. But I want to be there for my kids now. I want to go fishing.
In fact, you want to go fishing and maybe a bit of politics, because you're a strong conservative, aren't you?
Well, if I'm elected, I will do... No.
Now, I know you've met Trump a few times. What do you really think of Donald Trump?
I've met Donald Trump. If Donald Trump were in the office today, we wouldn't be in half the messes we're in right now. I'm sorry. We just do not have a strong president. So... I don't know if he'll run. If he runs, I'm voting for him.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the conservative side of a Donald Trump is what will keep us safe, will keep us thinking straight as a country. Right now, we're not thinking straight.
Very interesting. Well, good luck with the last few concerts. and tight lines when you fish
Amen,
in
brother.
your retirement and enjoy the ground. And I might come with you, you never know.
I'm just going to say, you're always welcome.
Merrill, thank you for
Thanks,
joining us
Nigel.
on Talking Pints. Okay, I've got a couple of minutes left, and it is Barrage the Farage. So you send your questions in. I don't know what they are. Here goes. Steve asks me, what do you think about Boris not inviting the Lionesses to Downing Street? Disgusting. You know, the England cricket team win the Ashes. They get invited to a party at Downing Street. All sorts of Olympic celebrities, sporting achievers get invited to Downing Street. What those 11, well, in fact, the whole squad, did winning the European Cup was fantastic. And for them not to be invited to Downing Street, and I'm told that night Johnson was out himself carousing somewhere, shows you that his political career is coming to an end. They're of no advantage to him anymore, and that's why he didn't invite them. And for those of you who think I'm too tough on Johnson, I think this just about shows it. Big parade in Trafalgar Square, a nation very happy with what they'd done, and it's absolutely wrong they didn't get the invite because he couldn't be bothered. They're of no use to him. Matthew asks, is Nancy Pelosi stupid? Is she going to start World War III? What on earth is she hoping to achieve other than provoking retaliation and creating upset and hatred? Look, I think we did the Pelosi stuff earlier in the show. And I mean, the fact is, Pelosi actually on China has been consistent ever since Tiananmen Square. You could argue this is one of the very few things Pelosi's ever got right in her political career, is the threat, the worry about China that she saw a long time ago. But to go on her own, on a one-woman mission, to stir things up when it might have been better to let sleeping dogs lie, looks reckless at best. And Andrew asks me, if Rishi loses his quest for being PM, do you think he'll stay in politics? Not a cat's chance in hell. Rather, as Johnson couldn't give a damn about the Lionesses because he doesn't need their vote and doesn't need your vote for the moment, Rishi, he'll be on the West Coast. That green card will be reactivated. He'll be out on the West Coast making loads and loads of money. And I'm afraid there are two types of people in politics. Those who are in politics because they want to be someone, or those who are in politics because they want to do something. And sadly, there are too many people these days in politics because they want to be something. It's about them. It's not about you. Now, tomorrow night, it'll be Farage at Large with a live audience. We will be in Bognor Regis. Don't bother to go to the website to get tickets. It's a completely full house. But I'll join you all tomorrow evening at 7. But now I'm handing over, of course, to Mark Stein.
Yeah, great to see Merrill Osmond with you, Nigel. I did a little bit of business with his brother Jay many years ago. He was a very easy man to do business with over that fantastic song of theirs, Crazy Horse.
Yes.
Absolutely. A terrific group, and they're all still going strong.
And he says, he really promises, this is it, he's retiring.
Yeah.
I don't really believe it.
No, I don't think so. Because they're like their great mentor, Andy Williams. They just get a kick out of being on stage
Absolutely.
and keep going. I'd much rather think about the Osmonds than Rishi Sunak. And I think you're right. I mean, he's not going to be in the UK. He's going to be
West Coast.
Yeah, and he's going to be wanting to be like a certain deputy prime minister who wound up as some head honcho at Facebook. It's a terrible summer. The way some of these guys go. We got lots of good stuff on the show. We have some a terrible personal story out of one of the dark towns of England, and we also have some other news for you on the COVID vaccines and on all kinds of other stuff. All coming up right after the weather.
Good evening, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update. Good news, if you're not a fan of the humidity, it is turning fresher for all of us tonight and tomorrow. Remaining dry though across the south, not much rain where we really need it. There will be showers further north from low pressure. There is this weather front drifting south that is introducing the cooler and fresher air, but it's not introducing much rain. And the warmth and humidity is still there at the moment across East Anglia and the southeast, but it will turn cooler as the night goes on. But as I said, not much in the way of rainfall, just the odd shower here and there. Much more in the way of rainfall further north, some pretty heavy rain this evening for Northern Ireland, and we'll see some heavy bursts of rain across eastern Scotland as well. Comfortable night here and elsewhere. It is turning cooler. but even by dawn, only temperatures dropping to 15 or 16 across East Anglia and the southeast. But it will feel fresher here tomorrow. Generally dry and sunny across the Midlands, South Wales and southern England. Further north there'll be sunny spells, but there will be showers as well, particularly early on over northwest England and throughout the day across northern Scotland. Temperatures here struggling in the mid-teens, but elsewhere close to average, high teens, low 20s, so not as humid, a much fresher feel, but we could still get to 25 across the southeast. Staying fine here on Thursday evening, a few more showers keeping going across western Scotland, some coming into Northern Ireland. We may see some feeding in through the Irish Sea into parts of northwest England into Friday morning. So yes, a few showers again across the northwest on Friday, but much of the east and certainly across the south. Not much in the way of rainfall. It's a dry, fine day on Friday with lengthy spells of sunshine, that fresher feel, that less humid feel, with temperatures close to average, high teens or low 20s. But again, feeling pretty fresh across northern Scotland with temperatures here in the mid-teens. Into the weekend, again, if you have to rain, it's not good news. Most places dry with sunny spells, starting off quite fresh, but signs of things warming up through the weekend into next week.
As the race for number 10 intensifies, we are giving you the chance to get to know our next Prime Minister. We've invited the two candidates to meet you, the GB News viewers, and let you put your questions to them. Head directly to gbnews.uk or send me your questions to questions@gbnews.uk.
Join Alistair Stewart for the People's Forum with Liz Truss. Wednesday at 5, only on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.